Peni Henare.
Mr. Speaker, despite the hype and despite the spin, this government should be ashamed. Their regional program of development actually isn't to roll out a rural broadband, it's still operating in dial-up. That's exactly what's happening in our regions, and let me give you an example, Mr. Speaker. In the Bay of Islands, Mr. Speaker, they're really proud, the people in the Bay of Islands, that they will be receiving 30 cruise ships this summer, an amazing number of cruise ships. But what sadly hasn't happened in that particular region is there has been no development of the infrastructure, none whatsoever. They still arrive to the same wharf that was there when I was a kid, that didn't receive 30 cruise ships. They still get off on that wharf and they cross still a one-lane bridge. A one-lane bridge in Northland, who would have thought it? After that, they get over into Paihia, they get over into Waitangi, into Opua. Not one new hotel has been built. So how do we cater for all these visitors? How do we make sure that tourism across the world, the high reputation of New Zealand in the tourism industry, is well protected? Well, I tell you how we do it, Mr. Speaker. We must be serious about our development, our investment in our regions. And that is just one small example. To continue on tourism, Mr. Speaker, the tourism industry, and I've said this in this House before, we're very clear about their opposition towards a tax. Taxing our visitors. We have numbers that we've never seen before come in and out of our country. Then all of a sudden, a tax gets placed on that kind of travel. The industry was clear, they didn't want it, but this government still pushed ahead with their tax on travellers. All of these things, I fear, Mr. Speaker, doesn't bode well for our tourism industry. And I want to congratulate them because I think they've got there on their own steam. It certainly hasn't been by any great piece of legislation, any fantastic policies or strategies, but by the hard work of the people in the tourism sector. Mr. Speaker, it's been brought up in this general debate, the corridor, the conversation around the detainees, and more importantly, our relationship with our younger siblings across the ditch, the people in Australia, and the importance of this government, and indeed anyone who represents this country, on representing New Zealand the best way possible, wherever they may go. Mr. Speaker, it's been a huge concern to see how those people who are being detained on Christmas Island are being treated. Human rights issues, and I'm proud of Calvin Davis for heading over there, leading the charge, bringing up the conversation, a conversation that this particular government have been trying to ignore. In fact, Mr. Speaker, when I think about many of the people, our own citizens over in Australia, and now this might seem like a bit of a stretch, but Te Ture Whenua Māori. Te Ture Whenua Māori review, Mr. Speaker, aims to isolate Māori landowners, those with shares in Māori land in Australia. It aims to isolate them over there, to silence their voice on the many boards and the many governance structures that are in place to look after Māori land. I'm all for growing Māori development of their land, I am, to improve the economy, to improve the state of Māori, but it must be done collaboratively, it must be done by engaging those landowners and those who hold shares. The current reform that's going through at the moment doesn't do that. It isolates those people in Australia, it cuts them out from what we call in the Māori world, ahika, or their home fires. And this, Mr. Speaker, I think is an absolute travesty, given the Minister in his dealing with this Ture Whenua Māori Reform Act ignored the expertise of all of the experts and all of those who are involved in the Māori Land Court process, ignored them all, handpicked a small group that could push through this type of reform that would do this to Māori landowners. This is an absolute travesty, and I encourage all of those whānau in Australia to stand up for the rights, stand up for the shares that they own in Māori land to make sure their voice is heard. And in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, can I finish by saying, go the All Blacks.